May Carter's knees hit the dust before her trunk did. The cowboy stepped out of the land office, looked her up and down once, and said it loud enough for the whole town to hear. "This ain't the woman I ordered." The sheriff laughed behind him. "Oh, Crow sent you the heavy one." May didn't cry. She didn't run. She lifted her chin at the man who had bought and rejected her in the same breath. If you believe a woman's worth ain't measured by her waistline, subscribe to this channel, stay with May until the very end, and drop the name of your city in the comments so I can see how far her story has traveled. The bell above the boarding house door rang 3 times before sunrise, and every woman on the second floor knew what 3 rings meant. Somebody had run. "Lillian's gone," a voice hissed in the hallway. "Crawled out the back window. Left her bonnet on the chair like she meant for us to find it." She wouldn't. She did. "Then Crow'll be here before breakfast." May Carter heard it all with her cheek pressed to the thin pillow, and she did not move. She had learned by the age of 24 that bad news always came looking for the quietest girl in the room. If she stayed still, maybe it would pass her by. Maybe it would knock on another door. It didn't. Boots came up the stairs at 6:15, heavy and unhurried, the way a man walked when he already knew he was going to get what he came for. The door opened without a knock. "Miss Carter?" May sat up. She did not answer yet. She was taking the measure of him the way a woman takes the measure of weather. Elias Crow was tall, thin, and dressed in a black coat too warm for summer. He removed his hat with the politeness of a snake coiling. "You know why I'm here." "I know Lillian's gone." "Then you know more than most." He stepped inside without being invited. "The coach leaves Wednesday. The bride does not." "That ain't my concern, Mr. Crow." "It is today." May swung her legs over the side of the bed and planted her bare feet on the floor. She was a broad woman. She had always been a broad woman. Her mother had told her once kindly that God built some girls to carry and others to be carried. May had decided young that she would rather be the one who carried. "Speak plain," she said. "Plain, then." Crow set his hat on the dresser. "You are 7 months behind on room and board. Your employer at the laundry closed his doors in April. You have no living family within 400 miles. I have let the debt run because I am a Christian man. You have let the debt run because it earns you interest." He did not flinch. He smiled. "Clever," he said. "Good. A clever woman survives out west." "I ain't going west." "You are going somewhere, Miss Carter. The question is whether you go as a bride or as a defaulter. A defaulter goes to the workhouse in Jefferson City. A bride goes to a 1,000-acre cattle ranch in Wyoming Territory with a roof, a stove, and a husband already paid in full. A husband who paid for Lillian. A husband who paid for a wife. The name on the contract is not signed, only the sum. May felt the blood leave her hands. She pressed them flat against the quilt to keep them from trembling where he could see. "And if he sends me back?" "He won't." "If he does?" "Then you will have had a coach ride a week of prairie air and the satisfaction of having been seen by a gentleman before you return to your debt. But he will not send you back. Out there, a man who has paid for a wife does not send her back. It is bad for his reputation and worse for his cattle count." "I ain't cattle, Mr. Crow." "No, Miss Carter. You are collateral." She looked at him a long time. The other girls on the floor had gone silent behind their doors. May could feel them listening. She could feel the shape of the rest of her life pressing against the inside of her chest, like something trying to be born or trying to die, she could not yet tell which. "Wednesday," she said. "Wednesday." He agreed. He put his hat back on and left without closing the door behind him. May sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. When she finally stood, she walked to the small cracked mirror above the wash basin and looked at herself the way she had not let herself look in years. Round face, soft chin, shoulders wide as any farmhand's, hands that had scrubbed, wrung, folded, carried, and soothed, but had never not once been held. "Well," she said to her own reflection, "you wanted to see the world, May Carter. Reckon the world is fixin' to see you." The stagecoach left Wednesday at dawn, and by the time it crossed into the grasslands, May had learned 3 things about the woman sharing her bench. The woman's name was Ruth. Ruth was 40, widowed, on her way to keep house for a brother in Cheyenne, and Ruth did not believe in polite silence. "You don't look like a bride," Ruth said somewhere past the second river crossing. "I ain't one yet." "Mail order." Something like that. "Who bought you?" May turned her face toward the window. "A rancher named Mercer." Ruth was quiet a moment. Then she let out a long, low whistle. "Caleb Mercer. You know him." "I know of him. Every woman between Kansas and the Divide knows of him. Lost his wife and his boy to the fever 3 summers back. Ain't smiled since they say. Runs the biggest spread in Cold Hollow and lets nobody close to the porch but the dog. Sounds like a fine husband." Ruth laughed once, not unkindly. "Honey, that man didn't send for a wife. That man sent for a replacement." May said nothing. "Don't go soft in the heart over him," Ruth said. "Men like that don't mend. They only learn to carry it quieter." "I didn't come for his heart," May said. "I came for his roof." Ruth looked at her for a long moment, and something in the older woman's face shifted the way a face shifts when it recognizes itself. "Then you'll do fine, girl. You'll do fine. Get along." Cold Hollow was smaller than May had pictured it. 1 main street, a land office, a feed store, a church with its paint peeling, a saloon with the shutters open to catch what breeze there was. The coach pulled up in front of the land office at 3 in the afternoon, and before the driver had even set the brake, May saw him. He was standing in the doorway with his arms crossed. Tall, sun-darkened. A black hat pulled low. A jaw like a man who had not agreed with anything in a long time. Beside him stood a man with a tin star on his vest, and the kind of grin May had seen on boys who pulled wings off flies. The driver opened the coach door. "Ma'am," he said, offering his hand. "Cold Hollow." May took the hand. Her boot hit the step. The step creaked. She came down into the street with the full weight of her, and she saw the cowboy's eyes move from her face to her waist to her hips and back up to her face. His mouth tightened. He said it loud. "This ain't the woman I ordered?" Every head on the boardwalk turned. A woman with a basket stopped mid-step. A boy holding a horse's lead went still. The saloon shutters creaked in the breeze, and for a moment that was the only sound. Then the sheriff laughed. "Oh, Caleb!" He slapped his own thigh. "Oh, Caleb Crow sent you the heavy one." The laughter cracked out of him in a way that told May he had been waiting all afternoon to say it. A ranch hand by the water trough snorted. A man leaning in the saloon doorway grinned and looked at his boots so as not to look at her face. May felt the heat climb up her neck. She felt the strap of her carpet bag bite into her palm. She felt the dust on her tongue and the sweat down the small of her back and the terrible familiar stillness that came over her whenever the world decided to make her the joke. But she did not cry. She did not run. She set the bag down at her feet. She brushed the dust from the front of her dress with 2 slow, deliberate strokes. She looked the cowboy in the eye. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "I reckon we got a problem." Caleb Mercer did not answer her. He looked past her at the driver. "Where's Crow?" "Back in Missouri, sir." "Then who do I send this back to?" May heard the word "this" and felt something inside her close like a door. "Mr. Mercer," she said again louder. "I am standing right here." He looked at her then. Properly. For the first time. His eyes were not cruel. That was almost worse. His eyes were tired, and in that tiredness there was a flat practical calculation that told her he was not looking at a woman. He was looking at a problem he had paid good money to solve. "Ma'am," he said, and the word was correct, and the word was empty. "There has been a mistake." "There has been a swap," May said. "Not a mistake. Lillian Whitmore ran off 2 nights before the coach. Mr. Crow said a bride was paid for and a bride would be delivered. I am the bride he delivered." The sheriff whistled low. "She's got sand, Caleb. I'll give her that." "Sheriff Briggs," Caleb said without turning, "shut your mouth. It was the first kindness May had heard, and it was not a kindness for her. It was an order for him. But the sheriff's grin faltered just the smallest measure, and May filed that away in the part of her mind that kept track of who had power over whom. Caleb stepped down off the boardwalk. He was a tall man, taller up close. He stopped 2 paces from her and lowered his voice. "Ma'am, I do not know you." "No, sir. I did not send for you." "No, sir. I paid a fee for a woman named Lillian Whitmore, and I have signed no contract with anyone else." "That is correct, Mr. Mercer. The fee was paid. The name was not." He studied her. His jaw worked once. "You are telling me I can send you back?" "You can try, sir. The coach leaves at first light, but Mr. Crow will not refund the fee. He will tell you the woman was delivered. He will tell you it was your business what you did with her after she arrived. And what do you suggest I do with you, ma'am?" May lifted her chin. "I suggest you stop talking about me like I am a crate of nails on your porch." The sheriff laughed again, sharper this time. "Caleb, she's got a tongue on her too. Reckon Crow sent you the whole package." "Briggs." Caleb did not raise his voice. "I told you once." Briggs held up both hands in mock surrender, but the grin stayed. Caleb looked at May a long moment. She looked back. She did not let her eyes drop. She had decided somewhere between the river crossing and the edge of town that if this man was going to throw her away, he was going to have to do it while she was looking straight at him. "Come inside," he said finally. "We'll talk where the whole county ain't listening." He turned and walked into the land office without waiting to see if she followed. May picked up her bag. The handle was damp where her palm had been sweating. "Ma'am," a voice said at her elbow. She turned. A gray-haired woman in a dark dress was standing at the edge of the boardwalk. The woman's face was lined, her eyes sharp, her mouth firm. "Ma'am," the woman said again, quieter. "Whatever he decides in there, you come see me. Bell's Dry Goods, 2 doors down. My name is Ada Bell." "Why?" Ada's mouth softened the barest amount. "Because I have been the heavy one in this town, and I have been the thin one, and I have been the widow, and I have been the wife, and I have lived long enough to know the difference between a man who is cruel and a man who is only afraid. And you, child, deserve a bench to sit on either way." May's throat closed. She nodded once because her voice would not come, and she walked into the land office. Inside it was cooler, and it smelled of paper and leather, and the kind of dust that lived in ledger books. Caleb was standing at the counter with his hat in his hands. He did not turn when she came in. "Shut the door, ma'am." She shut it. "Sit down." "I'll stand, Mr. Mercer." He turned then. His eyes went over her once more, and this time she saw him try briefly to see past the shape of her to the woman inside. He did not quite manage it, but he tried. She saw the try. "Ma'am," he said. "What is your name?" "May Carter." "Miss Carter, then." "Miss Carter, then." "Miss Carter, I am a widower. I have a ranch 11 miles out. I run 400 head of cattle, and I keep 3 hired men and 1 cook. The cook left in May. The housekeeping has gone to seed since my wife passed. I sent for a bride because a bride is cheaper than a cook, and a housekeeper and a woman to mend the shirts, and because the preacher's wife told me I was becoming a man who frightened children, and I reckoned she was right." May said nothing. "I did not send for a friend," he went on. "I did not send for a companion. I did not send for love. I sent for order. I am telling you this so you do not arrive at my gate with the wrong notion." "I have not arrived with any notion, Mr. Mercer. I was sold to you for a debt. I do not expect love from a man who has just called me this in front of his town." His jaw tightened. He looked at the floor. When he looked back up, something in him had shifted the tiniest degree. That was poorly said. It was. "I will not say it again. See that you don't." There was a silence. It stretched. In the stretching, May felt the first small shift in the air between them. Not a kindness, not yet, but the recognition on both sides that the other was not going to be moved easily. "Miss Carter," he said at last, "I cannot marry you today." I did not ask you to. But I cannot send you back either. Crow has my fee, and the town has its laugh. And if I put you on that coach tomorrow, I will be the man who paid for a woman and discarded her in the street. That is not a thing I will carry. So what are you proposing, Mr. Mercer? He set his hat on the counter. He looked at her directly. I am proposing that you come out to the ranch. You work the house. You work the kitchen. You earn week by week the value of the fee I paid. When the fee is cleared, you are free to go with a wage for whatever time you stay past it, and a letter of good character from me to any town you please. And between now and then, Miss Carter, you are neither my bride nor my servant. You are the woman who came on the wrong coach, and you are under my roof, and no man in Cold Hollow will say a word to you that I do not hear. May looked at him for a long, long moment. Mr. Mercer. Ma'am, if you ever again call me this, or the heavy one, or what Crow sent in front of your town, or behind my back, I will walk off that ranch with nothing but the dress on my shoulders, and you will answer to your own conscience for the rest of your days. Do we understand one another? Caleb Mercer was silent. Then slowly he picked up his hat. Yes, ma'am, he said. We understand one another. He held the door for her. She walked through it. The sheriff was still on the boardwalk. He opened his mouth. Caleb looked at him. The sheriff closed his mouth. May climbed up onto the wagon seat beside the man who had bought and rejected her, and as the wheels began to turn toward the 11 miles of prairie that lay between her and whatever was coming next, she pressed her hands flat against her knees so he would not see them shake. And she did not look back at the town that had laughed. She looked forward, into the heat, into the dust, into whatever summer was going to make of her now. The wagon bench was hard, and the silence between them was harder. Caleb Mercer did not speak for the first 2 miles. May Carter did not speak for the first 3. She kept her hands flat on her knees and her eyes on the backs of the 2 horses in front of her, and she counted the rhythm of their hooves, the way a woman counts stitches when she is trying not to think. Miss Carter. Mr. Mercer? There is a creek about a mile ahead. We will water the team. You will want to stretch. Yes, sir. That was the whole of it. He clicked his tongue at the horses. She counted hooves. At the creek, he climbed down first, and she saw him hesitate. A man raised right would have come around the wagon to help a woman down. A man angry would have walked away and left her to manage. Caleb Mercer did neither. He stood at the horses' heads and did not look at her, and said over his shoulder, "Take your time, ma'am." It was not kindness. It was not cruelty. It was a man trying to figure out what a woman he had not chosen was owed. May climbed down on her own. The wagon creaked under her weight. She felt it creak. She felt him not look at her while it creaked. She stepped into the grass and walked the length of the wagon and stopped at the horses' shoulders, and she said quiet enough that the horses could hear her, and he could too. They are good animals. They are. Bay mare's favoring her off hind. He turned his head. Since when? Since we left town. You didn't see it because you were driving. A stone maybe. Worth a look. He looked at her a long second. Then he knelt by the mare and ran his hand down the leg and lifted the hoof. He pulled a pebble out of the frog with the tip of his knife. Obliged, he said, not looking up. I grew up on a farm, Mr. Mercer. That's so. I did not come to you ignorant. He set the hoof down. He straightened up. He looked at her over the mare's shoulder, and for the first time his eyes were not tired and not calculating. They were for one short breath curious. What else did you grow up with, Miss Carter? Hens, goats, a kitchen garden, a root cellar, a mother who would not let a grain of salt go to waste, a father who broke his back 4 times before he was 40 and still stood up to plant. Where are they now? In the ground, Mr. Mercer. He nodded once. He did not say he was sorry. She was glad he did not. She was tired of sorry. Sorry was a word people said when they wanted to close a door. They climbed back onto the wagon. He clicked at the horses. And the silence that followed was a different silence than the one before. The ranch came up on them the way ranches come up on a body out west, slow and then sudden. One minute there was nothing but grass, and the next there was a line of fence and a long, low house and a barn leaning into the afternoon sun. May saw it and understood two things at once. The first was that Caleb Mercer had built this place with his hands. The second was that he had stopped tending to it the day his wife died. The porch needed paint. The barn needed a hinge. The kitchen garden was half weeds. There was a henhouse off to the side with a door that did not quite latch, and May could hear even from the wagon that a hen had laid an egg somewhere she was not supposed to. "It has gone to seed," Caleb said, as if he felt her looking. "It has," May said. "I warned you." "You did. The cook's room is off the kitchen. You will take that. The main bedroom is mine. My wife's things are still in it. You will not go in." "No, sir." "Supper is at 6. The men eat at the long table. You will cook for 4 and yourself, if you can cook." "I can cook." "We will see." He pulled the wagon up by the porch. He did not offer her his hand. He did not watch her climb down. He carried her carpet bag to the door and set it on the boards, and walked back to the team without another word, and May stood on the porch of a house she had not chosen and watched the man who had not chosen her lead his horses away. She stood there a full minute. Then she picked up her bag and went inside. The kitchen told her everything. Flour in a sack with the mouth left open, which was how a woman lost half her flour to weevils. A pot on the stove with a rind of stew cooked onto the bottom. A dishcloth gone stiff. A window so fly-specked she could not see the yard. A jar of salt tipped on its side. A broom in the corner that had not moved since spring. May set her bag down. She rolled her sleeves to the elbow. She tied the apron she found on a peg. She looked around the kitchen one more time, not with despair, but with the slow, practical eye of a woman who had spent her life walking into rooms that other people had given up on. "All right," she said to nobody. "All right." She put water on. She scrubbed the stew pot. She swept. She wiped the window. She found 3 eggs in the henhouse and 2 more under the porch. She found a smoked ham hanging in the cellar that was still good, and a bag of dried beans that was not. She found a tin of baking soda that had been open so long it had gone to chalk, and a tin of coffee that had not. She found in a drawer nobody had opened in a long time a woman's recipe book with a pressed flower between pages 17 and 18, and the handwriting of a young wife who had made notes in the margins, like "Caleb likes this with extra pepper, and Thomas will only eat it if I sing." May closed the book slowly. She did not read any more. She put it back in the drawer exactly the way she had found it, face down with the flower between the same 2 pages. Some things a woman did not touch. She cooked. At 6 o'clock, the door opened, and 3 ranch hands came in, and they stopped in the doorway. The way men stop when something in a room is not what they expected. The oldest one, a thin man with a sunburned neck, took off his hat. The middle one, shorter and sharper-eyed, did not. The youngest, a boy of maybe 18, stared openly at May, and then remembered himself and stared at the floor. "Evenin', ma'am," the oldest said. "Evenin'," May said. "Sit down, supper's on." "Where's the boss?" "Washin' up." The sharp-eyed one kept his hat on. He sat down. He put his elbows on the table. He said, not quite under his breath, "Reckon Crow's deliveries have got bigger this year." The kitchen went very still. May was at the stove. Her back was to them. She felt the words the way a person feels the first cold breath of a coming storm, and she felt for one sharp second the old May, the May of the boarding house hallway, want to curl her shoulders and pretend she had not heard. She set the spoon down. She turned around slowly. She wiped her hands on her apron. She walked to the table. She stopped behind the sharp-eyed man. She did not raise her voice. "What is your name, sir?" He looked up at her. He had the grin ready. "Hank Voss, ma'am." "Mr. Voss?" "Ma'am." "You are eatin' at my table tonight. Tomorrow night also, if you mind your mouth. If you do not mind your mouth, you will eat on the porch. If you do not mind your mouth on the porch, you will eat in the barn. If you do not mind your mouth in the barn, Mr. Voss, you will find that I have a very good memory and a very long ladle, and I will not be cooking for you at all. Do we understand one another?" Hank Voss opened his mouth. Do we understand one another, Mr. Voss? He shut it. He nodded once. Words, please. Yes, ma'am. Good. She went back to the stove. Your hat. Ma'am. Off, Mr. Voss. You are indoors. He took it off. The oldest ranch hand, the sunburned one, looked at May like a man looks at a horse he has misjudged. The youngest looked like he was about to laugh and knew better than to try. Hank Voss looked at his plate. The door opened. Caleb Mercer came in. He stopped. He looked at the table. He looked at the three men with their hats off and their hands folded. He looked at May at the stove. He did not ask what had happened. He sat down at the head of the table. Miss Carter. Mr. Mercer. Smells like food. It is food. First time in this kitchen in a long while. I gathered. He almost smiled. The corner of his mouth moved the smallest measure, and then went flat again, the way a man's mouth moves when he has forgotten he is allowed. May set the plates down one at a time. Ham. Beans softened in broth because the dried ones were no good. Biscuits she had thrown together from whatever flour had not gone to weevils. Eggs scrambled with the last of the butter. Coffee, black and hot. Nobody spoke for the first 3 bites. The youngest ranch hand, the boy, said quietly, Ma'am, these biscuits are the best thing I have put in my mouth since my mama died. May's throat closed. What is your name, son? Eli, ma'am. Eli, there are 2 more on the stove. They are yours. Ma'am. The sunburned one cleared his throat. Name's Tom Hurley, ma'am. Been here 6 years. Ain't eaten like this in 3. Mr. Hurley. Hank Voss did not look up. Caleb Mercer ate. He ate slowly, the way a man eats when food has stopped being a pleasure and become a duty. But halfway through his plate, he slowed down further, and May saw it. She saw the exact moment a man who had not tasted his own food in 3 years tasted it. He did not say anything. He did not need to. When the plates were cleared, Caleb stood. Miss Carter. Mr. Mercer. Breakfast is at 5. It will be on the table at 5. Obliged. He went out the back door toward the barn, and May stood at the sink and put her hands in the hot water and looked at nothing for a long moment, and then she got back to work. That night, she lay on a narrow cot in a room off the kitchen, and she listened to the house settle around her, and she did not sleep. She was tired enough to sleep. She did not. She lay and stared at the ceiling, and somewhere around midnight, she understood why. She was waiting. She was waiting for a door to open. She was waiting for a man to come into the room and decide that since he had paid for a wife, he would take what he had paid for. The door did not open. At some point after midnight, she heard Caleb Mercer walk past her room on his way to the main bedroom. She heard him stop. She heard him stand outside her door for a long second. She did not breathe. Then she heard him walk on. She heard his door close. And May Carter, for the first time in a week, let the breath out of her chest and cried silently into her pillow. And she did not know whether she was crying because she had been afraid or because she had not needed to be. The next morning, she was at the stove at 4:30. At 5, the biscuits were on the table. At 5:02, the men came in. At 5:03, Hank Voss took his hat off before she looked at him. By the end of the first week, the flour was in a tin with a weight on the lid. The henhouse door latched. The kitchen window was clean. The stew pot had not had a rind on it since Monday. The kitchen garden had been weeded on the west half because the east half was beyond her in 1 week. But May had stood in it at sundown on Thursday with her hands on her hips and said to it out loud, "I will get to you," the way a woman speaks to a child who has been neglected. By the end of the second week, Caleb Mercer had said at supper, without looking up from his plate, "Miss Carter, the biscuits." And she had said, "Yes, Mr. Mercer," and he had said, "They are good," and that was all. But Tom Hurley had looked down at his plate to hide a small private smile, and Eli had grinned openly, and Hank Voss had gone very quiet and stayed quiet for the rest of the meal. By the end of the third week, the porch had been swept. The root cellar had been inventoried. The egg count was being kept on a slate by the back door, and Caleb Mercer had come into the kitchen on a Wednesday afternoon and set a pair of work gloves on the table without a word and walked out again. May picked them up. They were new. They were sized for a woman's hand, which meant he had gone into town to buy them. She held them a long time. She did not cry. She put them on. That evening when she brought the coffee pot to the table, she said, "Mr. Mercer." "Ma'am." "Obliged." He looked at his coffee. He said, "Miss Carter?" "Yes, sir." "A woman out here needs gloves." "Yes, sir." That was all of it. But Eli looked at Tom, and Tom looked at his plate, and something in the kitchen shifted the way a kitchen shifts when a house remembers it used to be a home. Dag. It was on a Saturday, in the 4th week, that Hank Voss tried it again. She was in the hen house. She had gone out to gather eggs, and found one of the hens killed by a weasel in the night, and she was kneeling in the straw holding the small warm body of a bird she had named Agnes. And she heard the boots behind her, and knew whose they were, before she turned around. "Mr. Voss?" "Miss Carter." "State your business." "Just come to help." "I do not need help." "A lady your size bending over. Reckoned I'd spare you the trouble." The old May would have stood up and fled the hen house. The new May, the May of the work gloves, did not. She stood up slowly, holding the dead hen, and she looked Hank Voss in the face. "Mr. Voss?" "Ma'am, you are not a clever man. I want you to understand that I know this about you. You are not clever, and you are not funny, and the only reason you are still drawing a wage on this ranch is because Mr. Mercer has bigger concerns than you. You will leave this hen house now, and you will not speak to me again unless it is about the salt or the coffee. Do you hear me? Now, ma'am. Do you hear me, Mr. Voss?" The hen house door opened. Caleb Mercer was standing in it. Nobody had heard him come. May did not know how long he had been there. By the look on Hank Voss's face, neither did Hank. "Voss." "Boss." "Out." "Boss, I was only—" "Out, Voss." Hank went. Caleb did not move from the doorway. He looked at May. She was still holding the dead hen. Her hands were shaking, not from fear now, from the aftershake, the tremble that comes when a woman has held her ground, and her body is only now noticing. "Miss Carter?" "Mr. Mercer." "Was he laying hands?" "No, sir." "Was he fixin' to?" "I did not give him the chance, sir." He looked at her a long second. Then he looked at the hen in her hands. "Weasel?" "Yes, sir." "I'll set a trap tonight." "Obliged." He turned to go. At the doorway he stopped. He did not turn around. He spoke to the doorframe. "Miss Carter?" "Yes, sir." "A man in my employ who speaks to a woman on my land the way Voss spoke to you does not stay in my employ. If it happens again, you tell me. You do not stand alone in a hen house and defend yourself with a dead bird. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Mr. Mercer." "Good." He walked away. May stood in the hen house with the hen in her hands, and she did not cry, but something in her chest, something that had been held tight since the boarding house hallway in Missouri, loosened by the width of a thread. That night at supper, there were only 3 men at the table. Hank Voss was not among them. No one said a word about it. Caleb Mercer ate his biscuits. He said, "Miss Carter." "Mr. Mercer." "Pass the coffee." She passed the coffee. Their fingers did not touch. But he looked at her as he took the pot, and in his eyes, for the briefest flicker, there was something that was not tiredness and not calculation. It was the thing a man's face does when he has begun against his own intention to respect a woman he had intended to discard. May saw it. She did not react to it. She went back to the stove. She turned her face to the skillet so he would not see. She was smiling. By the end of the 6th week, Mrs. Ada Bell had ridden out from town on a borrowed mule and sat on the Mercer porch with May for an afternoon, and the 2 women had not spoken much. But when Ada left, she squeezed May's hand and said, "Child, you are thriving, and I will not have believed it if I had not seen it with my own eyes." And May had stood on the porch long after the mule was out of sight. By the end of the 7th week, Caleb Mercer was speaking to her at the table in full sentences about the cattle and the weather and the price of salt in town, and once on a Sunday he had asked her opinion on whether to sell the bay mare, and she had told him, and he had taken her advice. By the end of the 8th week, something was in the air over the prairie that a ranchman could read like a letter, and Caleb Mercer stood on his porch at sundown with his hat in his hand and looked at the sky and said quiet to nobody, "Storm's comin'." May heard him from the kitchen. She wiped her hands on her apron. She went to the door. She looked where he was looking. The sky to the west was the color of a bruise going yellow at the edges, and the wind had stopped the way wind stops before it has something to say. "Mr. Mercer." "Ma'am." "That is a bad one." "Yes, ma'am." "Tell me what you need." He turned his head and looked at her. A long, long look. And whatever he saw in her face in that moment, he did not say. But he put his hat on his head slowly, and he said, "Bring in the wash, Miss Carter. Shut the hen house. Tie down the porch chairs, and then come find me at the barn. I will need you tonight." "Yes, sir." She went. Behind her on the porch, Caleb Mercer watched her go for 1 second longer than a man watches a housekeeper. And then he turned toward the barn, and the first low roll of thunder walked across the prairie like something remembering her name. May brought in the wash in 6 minutes. She shut the hen house. She tied down the porch chairs with a length of twine that had been hanging on a nail since the last wife was alive. She ran, and she did not care who saw her run. At the barn door she stopped and put her hand flat against the wood and breathed once. "Mr. Mercer." "In here, ma'am." She pushed inside. The horses were already unsettled. The bay mare was pawing. The gray gelding had his ears pinned flat against his skull. "What do you need?" "The loft. Throw down 4 forkfuls of hay for each stall. Then help me get the tools off the south wall. Wind comes from the south on a bad one. That wall goes first." "Yes, sir." "Miss Carter." "Yes, sir." "You do not have to be here." "Mr. Mercer, if this barn goes, we lose $400 of horseflesh and a roof over my kitchen pantry. I am here." He looked at her 1 second. He nodded once. "Up the ladder, then." She climbed. She had not climbed a hayloft ladder in 11 years, and her body remembered it before her mind did the way a body remembers every hard thing it has ever done. She pitched the hay down in forkfuls. He caught it below and spread it in the stalls. The mare settled by degrees. The gelding did not. "Mr. Mercer." "Ma'am?" "That gray does not like the lightning." "He does not." "Has he been through a storm since you bought him?" "No, ma'am." "Then you will want a hood for his eyes. A feed sack will do. Tie it with the twine from my apron pocket. Toss the twine down." She tossed it. He caught it. He hooded the gelding. The gelding went still by half. The first roll of thunder hit the barn like a fist. The mare jumped. Caleb laid a hand flat on her shoulder and held her steady. "Come down, Miss Carter. I want you on the ground when it comes." "Yes, sir." She came down. Her boot slipped on the second-to-last rung. She landed hard. He was there before she knew he was moving. He caught her elbow. He did not let go until she was square on her feet. Then he let go fast. "Obliged." "Ma'am?" "Mr. Mercer?" "Ma'am." The south wall. They went to the south wall together. She held the tools. He took them off the pegs. A hammer, a handsaw, a scythe that had not been used since his wife was alive and had rusted on the hook. She took each one in her arms. She carried them to the far stall. The wind hit the barn. It hit it the way a man hits a door he means to break. The boards flexed. The lantern on the center post swung on its chain. The mare screamed, and the gelding under his hood did a terrible hollow stamp, and somewhere above them, in the rafters, a beam made a noise that May had never heard a beam make. "Mr. Mercer." "I hear it." "That is not Holden." "I know it is not Holden. Get down. Get low. If a beam comes, I want you under the stall rail." "Yes, sir." "Miss Carter." "Yes, sir." "Do not die in my barn." "No, sir. Would not dream of it." He almost laughed. It was not a laugh. It was the breath a man takes before a laugh cut off by the wind. The south door banged open. It had been latched. The wind tore the latch clean out of the wood. The door slammed back against the wall and swung on its hinges, and rain came in sideways in a sheet, and the gelding under his hood reared anyway, and the mare reared with him, and one of the stall rails cracked. "The door!" Caleb shouted. "Miss Carter, the door!" "I see it. Stay back. I will get it." "Mr. Mercer, you cannot hold the gelding and the door." "Stay back." She did not stay back. She ran for the door. She was not built for running. She ran anyway. She hit the door with her shoulder and her full weight, and the wind shoved back, and for one bad second she thought it would take her off her feet and out into the yard. And she set her boots against the boards, and she pushed, and the door came against the frame, and she got her hand on the broken latch, and she held it shut with nothing but the flat of her palm and the whole of her weight. "Mr. Mercer." "Ma'am, get away from that door." "Throw me the hammer. Throw me a nail." "Miss Carter, throw me the hammer." He threw her the hammer. He threw her a nail from the tin. She caught the hammer in her left hand, and the nail in her teeth, and she drove the nail through the latch bracket into the frame with 4 blows, and then another nail, and then another. And when she stepped back from the door, the wind was still trying to take it, and the door was holding. She turned around. Caleb Mercer was staring at her. He had the gelding by the cheek strap. His hat was gone. His hair was soaked. Rain was running off his jaw. He was staring at her like a man who had just seen a thing he had not expected to see in his own barn, on his own land, on any day of his life. "Miss Carter." "Mr. Mercer." "Where did you learn to drive a nail like that?" "My daddy, sir." "Your daddy taught his daughter." "My daddy did not have a son, sir." He did not answer. He stood there with his hand on the gelding's face, and he looked at her with rain running off his eyelashes, and May felt for the first time since the stagecoach that a man was looking at her and seeing her. The lightning came close. It came close enough that the whole barn lit up white for a count of 1, and the thunder that followed was not a roll, but a crack, and the mare came forward through the broken stall rail with her eyes showing white all around. "She is loose. Caleb, she is loose." She did not realize she had used his Christian name. He did. He moved. He got between the mare and the open center aisle. He got his hand on her halter. She half reared. He did not let go. "Miss Carter, the blanket. The gray blanket on the peg by the door. I have it." Over her eyes. Over her eyes, May. Slow. She did not realize he had used hers. She did. She moved slow. She talked to the mare the way her mother had talked to a sick goat, low and steady and without meaning any of the words. "Easy, girl. Easy now. Nobody is hurt. Nobody is hurt." She laid the blanket over the mare's eyes. The mare shuddered. The mare held. Caleb led the mare back into the stall. He propped the broken rail with a crate. He stepped out. He slid the latch. He turned around. He was 2 feet from May. The wind was tearing at the barn, but inside the barn for the moment it was only the 2 of them, and the rain on the roof, and the breath coming hard out of both of their chests. "Miss Carter." "Mr. Mercer, you could have been killed." "I was not killed." "You went at that door like a hand, not a housekeeper." "I went at it like a woman who did not want to sleep in a kitchen with no pantry, sir." "May." "Caleb." He said nothing for a long second. "Go to the house, Miss Carter." "Mr. Mercer." "Go to the house. I will follow. I need to see the north wall. Go and put dry clothes on, and put the coffee on, and for the love of God, do not run in this wind." "Yes, sir." She went. She did not run. She walked through the yard with the rain sideways in her face, and she did not feel the cold because something in her chest was burning, and she did not know yet whether it was fear or something else. Yuck. She had the coffee on when he came through the back door. He was soaked to the bone. He took his coat off on the porch and left it on a nail. He left his boots on the mat. He came into the kitchen in his stocking feet, with his hair plastered to his forehead and his shirt stuck to him, and he stopped just inside the door and looked at her at the stove, and neither of them spoke. She poured the coffee into a tin cup. She held it out. He took it. Their fingers touched. Neither of them moved. Mr. Mercer. Miss Carter. Sit down. You are shaken. I am not shaken. You are shaken, sir. He sat down. He wrapped both hands around the cup. He stared at the table. The rain hammered the roof. May sat down across from him with her own cup, not because she wanted coffee, but because a woman does not stand over a man who has just come in from a storm. Miss Carter. Yes, sir. I owe you my barn. You do not. I do. That door would have gone. The south wall would have gone with it. I would have lost the mare and the gelding, and likely the roof on the feed stores. Mr. Mercer, it is one door. It is not one door. He looked up at her. His eyes in the lantern light were not tired. They were not calculating. They were something else, and May did not yet have a name for it. May. Caleb. Why did you run at that door? Because it needed running it, sir. Any woman in Cold Hollow would have run the other way. I am not any woman in Cold Hollow. No, you are not. He drank. She drank. The silence held. May. Yes. I had a wife. May set her cup down. I know, sir. I had a wife and I had a boy. He was 4. His name was Thomas. Her name was Sarah. The fever came through in the summer of '68, and it took her in 5 days, and it took the boy in 3. I buried them on the West Rise. You have not been up there because I have not taken you up there. I do not take anybody up there. Caleb. Let me finish, May. I have not said this to a living soul in 3 years, and if I do not say it tonight, I will not say it. Yes, sir. He set the cup down. He put his hands flat on the table. I sent for a bride because the preacher's wife came out in April and told me the boys on the ranch were starting to talk like I had gone strange in the head. She said a man without a woman in his house for 3 years goes sideways. She said I did not have to love again. She said I only had to live again. She said order was the first step and affection was the second, and if I would not take the first step, she would not come back out to check on me. She was right. She was right. I wrote to Crow because Crow was the only name I knew. I told him I did not care about the face. I cared about the house. I told him I wanted a woman who could run a kitchen and keep a pantry and not cry when I did not speak at supper. I said I would pay for a plain woman if she was a good one. And Crow sent you Lillian. Crow sent me Lillian because Lillian's father owed Crow money, and Lillian was leaving town anyway. Crow told me Lillian was plain. Crow lied. And then Lillian ran. And then Lillian ran. And Crow sent me. And Crow sent you. He stopped. He looked at his hands on the table. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, and it had the rough break in it of a man who had not used his throat for this kind of talk in a long time. May. Yes, Caleb. When you stepped off that coach, I saw you and I was angry. I know you were. I was angry because I had asked for plain, and Crow had sent me 2 liars in a row. I was angry because the town was watching. I was angry because Briggs was already laughing. I was angry because I had already lived 6 weeks looking forward to a woman walking into my kitchen and making the place smell like food again, and the woman who walked in was not the woman I had pictured, and I did not know what to do with what I had paid for. So you called me this. I called you this, in front of your town. In front of my town. Caleb Mercer. Ma'am. That was the worst thing a man has ever said to me in my life. I know it was. Worse than the Borden house. Worse than Briggs. Worse than Voss in the hen house. Because you did not know me yet, and you had already decided what I was. I know. Do not say I know, Caleb. Say you are sorry. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said low, I am sorry, May. She did not cry. She had promised herself in Missouri that she would not cry in front of this man, and she kept the promise. But her throat closed, and she had to look at the window for a long second before she could look back at him. Why tonight, Caleb? Why tonight what? Why are you telling me this tonight? He looked at her. He looked at her the way a man looks at a thing he has been trying not to look at for a long time. Because tonight you ran at a door for me. That is not an answer, Caleb. Because tonight, May, I stood in my own barn, and a woman I had called this drove 4 nails into a latch bracket in a wind that would have killed a man my size. And I thought for the first time since Sarah went into the ground that somebody had come into my house who was not afraid of the weight of it. May's hand shook on the cup. Caleb. Let me finish, May. Caleb, I am not asking you to say, May, let me finish. I am not saying what you think I am saying. I am not standing up and asking you to marry me tonight because a barn door held. I am saying something smaller than that and bigger than that. I am saying that the day you walked off the stage, I saw the wrong woman. And I do not see the wrong woman anymore. I see the woman who is sitting at my table. Caleb. And I am saying, May Carter, that I do not know yet what a man is supposed to do with that. But I am not going to pretend I did not see it. Not tonight. Not after tonight. May looked at her cup. She looked at the table. She looked at her hands. She looked at him. Caleb Mercer. Ma'am. I have something to say, and you are going to let me say it without interrupting. Yes, ma'am. I did not come out here for love. I came out here for a roof. My mother died when I was 19, and my father died when I was 21, and for 5 years I have been a woman alone in a town that charged a woman alone twice the rent and half the wage. I have been measured by my dress size and my appetite and my value at a laundry board since I was 15 years old. I have been called the heavy one by so many men that I stopped flinching when I was 20. I stopped flinching, Caleb, and when a woman stops flinching at a thing, it is because something inside her has died to save the rest of her. Do you hear me? I hear you, May. I did not come out here to be loved. I came out here to be let alone. I came out here to work off a debt and ride back east with a letter of character and open a boarding house of my own in a town where nobody knew me as the heavy one. That was my plan. Was. Is. I do not know. Caleb, do not push me tonight. I have held a barn door. I am tired. I am not pushing, May. You are pushing. Yes, I am. I will stop. Obliged. They drank their coffee. The rain started to gentle on the roof. The worst of the wind had moved east. After a long time, May said quiet, Caleb? Yes. I am not saying no. I hear you. I am saying I am tired. And I am saying a woman who has been called the heavy one her whole life does not trust a kind word the first time she hears it, or the second, or the 10th. A kind word has to come back the next morning, and the morning after that, and 1,000 mornings after that, before a woman like me can lay her weight down on it. Then I will say it the next morning, May, and the morning after that. Do not promise 1,000, Caleb. Promise tomorrow. I promise tomorrow. Good. She stood up. She took his cup. She took hers. She rinsed them at the basin. Her back was to him. She heard him stand behind her. May. Yes, Caleb. One more thing, and then I will go to bed, and I will let you sleep, and we will not speak of tonight in the morning, unless you speak of it first. What is it, Caleb? Sarah was a small woman. May went very still. She was small, and she was quick, and she had a laugh like a bird, and I loved her for 9 years, and when she died, I thought that the only kind of woman I could ever love again would have to be the same kind of woman. Small, quick, bird-voiced. Caleb. Hush, May. I am saying something hard. Say it. I was wrong. The cup in May's hand slipped. She caught it. She set it down. May Carter. Yes, Caleb. I was wrong about what I was looking for. I have been wrong for 3 years. And I am standing in my kitchen tonight telling you that I do not know what a man does when he has been wrong for 3 years about the shape of his own heart. But I know I am not sending you back on a coach. I know I am not letting Voss in this house again. I know I am not sitting in this kitchen in the morning and pretending tonight did not happen. Those 3 things I know. The rest I do not. May turned around. Her eyes were wet. She had not cried in front of him. She did not cry now. But her eyes were wet, and he saw it, and he did not look away. Caleb Mercer. Ma'am? Go to bed. Yes, ma'am. Go to bed, and in the morning you will come to breakfast at 5, and you will eat your biscuits, and you will say, Miss Carter, and I will say, Mr. Mercer, and we will see what kind of daylight comes up on all of this. Do you hear me?" "I hear you, May." "Go to bed, Caleb." He went. At the door to the hall, he stopped. He did not turn around. "May." "Yes, Caleb." "Thank you for the door." "Go to bed, Caleb." He went. She stood at the basin for a long time after his bedroom door closed. She did not cry. She did not pray. She stood with her hands flat on the counter, and she breathed, and somewhere in the middle of the breathing, she understood that the woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 8 weeks ago was not the woman standing at this sink tonight, and she did not yet know whether that was a good thing or a terrible one. She put the lantern out. She went to her cot. She lay down in the dark in her damp dress, and she listened to the last of the rain, and for a long, long time she stared at the ceiling, and she thought about a man's hands on a mare's face in a dark barn, and a boy named Thomas, buried on the west rise, and a woman named Sarah, who had laughed like a bird, and a latch bracket she had nailed shut with 4 blows in a wind that should have killed a man twice her size. And somewhere before she slept, she said out loud into the dark, in a voice so low that even the house could not have heard her, "Tomorrow, Caleb Mercer, we will see about tomorrow." And outside the house the storm moved east across the prairie, and took with it the last of the summer's worst weather, and did not take with it the thing it had left behind in the kitchen of the Mercer ranch. A hoofbeat came down the road. It came slow. It came steady. It came from the west, not the east, where no rider should have been coming from at that hour of the night. May did not hear it. She had just fallen asleep. Caleb did not hear it. He was awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of a woman in a kitchen, and the hoofbeat was not yet close enough to carry. But it was coming, and it was bringing with it across 11 miles of wet prairie a woman in a fine traveling dress, with a father beside her in a second saddle, and a letter in her glove, and a plan in her mouth, and the name of Caleb Mercer on her tongue, the way a woman speaks the name of a thing she has decided to come back and take. Lillian Whitmore was on the road to Cold Hollow. The knock came at 6 in the morning, and May was already at the stove. She had slept 4 hours. Her hands knew the motions of biscuits without her mind needing to oversee them. The flour was in the bowl. The lard was in the flour. The buttermilk was on the counter. The coffee was on. She heard the hoofbeats in the yard before the knock. 2 riders. Shod horses. Not a ranch hand coming in for breakfast. She set the biscuit bowl down and wiped her hands on her apron and went to the front door, because the back door was for men who worked on the place, and the front door was for strangers, and the 2 riders had come to the front. She opened it. The woman on the porch was small, slender, and dressed for a journey she had not suffered. Her traveling cloak was clean. Her boots had been polished at a station somewhere in the last 10 miles. Her face was pale from the early hour, but not from exhaustion. The man behind her was gray at the temples, dressed in a banker's coat, and he was holding both sets of reins. The woman looked at May. May looked at the woman. Neither of them said a word for the length of 2 slow breaths. "Good morning," the woman said at last. "I am looking for Mr. Caleb Mercer. He is washing up. Breakfast is at 6. "And you are?" "May Carter, the housekeeper." The woman smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was worse than cruel. It was a smile a woman gives another woman when she has decided in one glance that the other woman is not a threat and never will be. "May, how perfectly kind of you to come to the door. I am Lillian Whitmore. This is my father, Mr. Whitmore. We have ridden through the night from the Cheyenne stage. I do hope Mr. Mercer will forgive the hour." May did not move from the doorway. "Miss Whitmore." "Yes, May." "My name is Miss Carter." The smile faltered for 1/10 of a second and came back in place. "Miss Carter, forgive me. Would you like to wait on the porch or in the parlor?" "The parlor would be very welcome." "Then step inside, Miss Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, mind the boots." She sat them in the parlor. She did not offer coffee. She went back to the kitchen, and her hands were trembling, and she put them under cold water at the basin, and she held them there for 30 seconds until they stopped. Caleb came in the back door with his hair wet from the pump. "Miss Carter." "Mr. Mercer." "Smells like—" "Caleb." He stopped. He looked at her. She did not call him Caleb at 6 in the morning at the stove. "May, what is it?" "Lillian Whitmore is in your parlor." He went very still. "Say that again." "Lillian Whitmore is in your parlor. Her father is with her. They rode in off the Cheyenne stage in the dark. She asked for you at the door. I put them in the parlor and did not offer them coffee. Your move, Mr. Mercer." He put his hand flat on the doorframe. "May." "Yes, Caleb." "I did not know." "I know you did not know." "May, look at me." "I am looking at you." "I did not know." "Caleb Mercer, I heard you. Go in there and speak to her." "May." "Go, Caleb. I will bring coffee in 5 minutes whether you want it or not, because a woman in a parlor with no coffee starts talking to fill the space, and I do not want Miss Whitmore filling any more space in this house than she has already filled. Go." He went. In the parlor, he did not sit down. He stood in the doorway with his hands loose at his sides, and Lillian Whitmore rose from her chair, and her father rose from his, and nobody spoke for a long second. "Mr. Mercer." "Miss Whitmore." "You have every right to turn us out." "I have not turned you out yet." "May I speak?" "You may." "Mr. Mercer, I was the coward. I ran from this marriage because I was frightened of the distance and the weather and the work. I was 22 years old, and I had never been further west than St. Louis, and I did not understand what I had agreed to. I know now what I threw away. I have come to ask Mr. Mercer if there is any part of that agreement that can be repaired." Caleb did not answer. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer, my daughter has traveled 3 weeks to say these words to you in person. I am aware that the contracted fee was paid and that Crow delivered a substitute. I am prepared to reimburse that fee in full with interest at the bank rate. I am prepared as well to augment my daughter's settlement by a figure we can discuss privately if—" Mr. Whitmore: "Yes, sir. I do not take a second payment on a bride I have not married." Of course, sir. I only meant—" "I know what you meant." The room went quiet. May came in with the coffee tray. She set it on the side table. She did not look at Lillian. She did not look at Caleb. She poured 3 cups. She set them out. She walked toward the door. "Miss Carter?" It was Lillian. May stopped. She turned around slowly. "Yes, Miss Whitmore." "Will you not stay and take coffee with us?" "Miss Whitmore, I am the housekeeper. I do not take coffee in the parlor." A housekeeper who came to the door in an apron dusted with flour. How perfectly charming. "Mr. Mercer, you have a gem." "Miss Whitmore." "Yes, Mr. Mercer." "Do not speak to her that way." Lillian's cup paused an inch from her lips. "I beg your pardon. Do not speak to Miss Carter that way. Not in my parlor, not in my yard, not in Cold Hollow, not anywhere you and I are standing in the same room. Do I have your understanding, Miss Whitmore?" Lillian set her cup down very carefully. "Mr. Mercer, I believe you have misheard me. I did not mishear you. I meant the compliment in the warmest possible— Miss Whitmore, I am not a subtle man. I have been rude to Miss Carter once in my life 8 weeks ago, on the day she stepped off the coach, and I have spent every morning since working to undo it. I will not have a guest in my parlor undo it for me with a smile. Do you hear me, ma'am?" Lillian's father said, "Caleb now. Mr. Whitmore, with respect, sir, this is my house." Mr. Whitmore sat back in his chair. May stood by the door. She did not know what to do with her face. She looked at the rug. "Miss Carter?" "Yes, Mr. Mercer." "Stay." "Sir." "Stay, May. Sit down. In the good chair, the blue one. You have been in this parlor twice in 8 weeks, both times with a broom. Sit down in the blue chair." May looked at him. She did not move. "Caleb." "May, sit down." She walked to the blue chair. She sat down. Her hands went flat on her knees the way they had gone flat on her knees on the wagon bench 8 weeks ago, when she had been counting hooves so she did not have to feel the rest of her life. Lillian looked at May. Lillian looked at Caleb. Lillian's smile was gone. "Mr. Mercer." "Miss Whitmore." "I see that I have misunderstood the arrangement here." "You have misunderstood nothing, ma'am. There is no arrangement. There is a woman named Miss Carter who has kept my house for 8 weeks, and there is a man named Caleb Mercer who has been a better man for 8 weeks than he was for 3 years before, and that is the whole of it." Caleb. "Miss Whitmore." Caleb. "May I speak plainly?" "Ma'am, I would prefer it. You paid for a bride. I was the bride. I ran. I regret it. I am here. The woman in that chair is your housekeeper. She is a fine housekeeper. I can see it in the way she poured the coffee, and I would be glad to have her in my employ after we are married. But she is not the woman you paid for Caleb. I am." May did not move. Caleb did not look at May. He looked at Lillian for a long, long moment. And when he spoke, his voice was not raised, but it was the voice of a man whose mind had been made up for some time and was only now finding the words. "Miss Whitmore." "Yes, Caleb." "I did not pay for a bride." Caleb, the fee. "I paid a fee to a man named Crow for the transport and arrangement of a woman who would keep a kitchen and not cry at my table. That is what I paid for. Crow sent me you, and you ran. Crow sent me Miss Carter, and Miss Carter stayed. A man who pays for an outcome and receives the outcome cannot complain that the outcome arrived in a different wrapping than he expected." Caleb Mercer. "Ma'am, are you saying to me in front of my father that you prefer your housekeeper?" "I am saying to you in front of your father that I do not know you, Miss Whitmore. I knew your name on a piece of paper, and I knew your face in a daguerreotype your father sent me through Crow. That is all I knew. I have had 8 weeks to know Miss Carter, and I know Miss Carter, and I will not stand in this parlor and trade the woman I know for the woman I do not." Lillian's hand went to her throat. Mr. Whitmore said, "Caleb, you are making a decision in a hot kitchen at 6 in the morning." "Mr. Whitmore, sir, I am making a decision that was made in a barn last night, and I am only speaking it in a parlor this morning because your daughter happened to ride in before I had coffee. I owe you the respect of your age, and I owe your daughter the respect of her journey, and I will give you both breakfast before I send you on the road to town. But I will not marry your daughter, sir, and I will not pretend this morning that I am considering it." Mr. Whitmore stood up. "Lillian, get your cloak." "Father." "Lillian, get your cloak. The gentleman has given his answer." "Father, I will not be dismissed in a ranch parlor like a—" "Lillian." Lillian stood. Her face was white. Her hands were trembling. She looked at May in the blue chair. She did not smile now. "Miss Carter." "Miss Whitmore." "You must be very pleased with yourself." May did not answer for a long second. Then she said quiet, "Miss Whitmore, I am not pleased. I am tired. I held a barn door in a storm last night, and I slept 4 hours, and I stood up at 4:30 this morning to put biscuits in the stove, and I opened my front door at 6 to find a woman who called me by my Christian name, as though she was ordering me to fetch her gloves. I am not pleased, Miss Whitmore. I am tired, and I will not stand in your way if you wish to leave, but I will also not apologize to you for being here." Lillian's jaw tightened. "Father, my cloak." Mr. Whitmore took her arm. He tipped his hat at Caleb, not kindly, not unkindly, the way a man tips his hat when a deal he had counted on has collapsed, and there is nothing left to do but walk out of the room. He tipped his hat at May very slightly, and May saw in that smallest gesture that Mr. Whitmore had understood something Lillian had not yet understood. He had understood in the 10 minutes since May had poured the coffee exactly who was the housekeeper and who was the woman of the house. They went to the door. Lillian stopped at the threshold. "Caleb? Miss Whitmore? The town will hear of this by nightfall." "I imagine it will." "The town will not be kind." "I imagine it will not." "You are choosing a woman the town has already laughed at." "I am choosing a woman who held my barn door in a storm, Miss Whitmore. The town can laugh until its jaw breaks. It will not change what I am choosing." Lillian's eyes glittered. "Then I wish you joy of her, Mr. Mercer. I wish you a safe ride, Miss Whitmore." They went out. The front door shut. The hoofbeats of the 2 horses went down the yard and out the gate and onto the road toward town. The parlor was very quiet. May did not look at Caleb. She stood up from the blue chair. She picked up the coffee tray. Her hands were steady. Her face was not. "Miss Carter? Mr. Mercer? Sit down." "Sir, the biscuits." "The biscuits can wait 4 minutes. Sit down, May." She sat. He sat across from her. He did not reach for her hand. He did not try. He looked at her the way he had looked at her in the barn in the dark, and he said low, "May." "Yes, Caleb." "I meant every word I said to her. I know you did." "May." "Yes, Caleb." "I am not asking you anything this morning." "Good, because I am not ready to answer anything this morning. I am only telling you what I told her. So you have heard it from me, and not through the walls." "I heard it, Caleb." "May." "Yes." "Are you staying?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Caleb Mercer, I will tell you the truth." "Tell me." "I do not know yet." He nodded. He did not push. He did not argue. That more than any word he had spoken in the parlor was the thing that moved something in her chest by another thread. "I did not know her," she said. "I did not know Lillian. I had imagined her. For 8 weeks I have imagined her as a woman with a face like a painting and a waist like a ribbon, and I hated her, Caleb. I hated her for being the woman you wanted before you ever saw me, and I hated her for being the reason Crow had leverage over me in Missouri, and I hated her even before she walked in the door." "May." "Let me finish, Caleb." "Yes." "And then she walked in the door and I saw her, and she was smaller than I had imagined, and prettier than I had imagined, and colder than I had imagined, and I realized something in about 2 breaths." "What did you realize?" "I realized she was not the woman I was afraid of. The woman I was afraid of was the woman I had built in my head for 8 weeks. The real Lillian Whitmore is a frightened girl who made a bad bargain and came back to mend it because her family told her to. She is not my enemy, Caleb. She is a girl who is going to ride back to town in a cold saddle and have to tell her mother that she was turned out of a ranch parlor at 6 in the morning. I do not envy her that ride." May Carter. "Yes, Caleb. You are a kinder woman than I am." "No, Caleb. I am not kinder. I am just older in some ways than my years. A woman who has been laughed at her whole life learns to see another woman's fear fast. It is a skill. It is not a kindness." "All right." "Caleb." "Yes. I have a question, and I want you to answer it honest. Ask me, if Lillian had come in 8 weeks ago, the day I stepped off the coach, the same hour, and she had stood on this porch and asked you what she asked you this morning, would you have taken her?" He did not answer fast. He thought about it. That was how she knew he was going to tell her the truth. "May." "Yes. 8 weeks ago, if Lillian had walked up that porch at 6 in the morning and asked me to honor the contract, I would have honored the contract. Not because I loved her, because a man who has paid a fee and made an agreement honors the fee and the agreement. I would have married her, May, and I would have sent you back on the coach, and I would have paid your fare, and I would have written a letter of character for a boarding house in Kansas City." May felt the words the way a woman feels a hand pressed flat against her sternum. She did not flinch. "And today, Caleb. Today, May. I would put Lillian Whitmore on her own horse and ride her to the town line myself, and I would come back to this kitchen and I would ask the woman in the blue chair if the coffee was hot, because the coffee in the blue chair is the only coffee I want to drink." May's throat closed. "Caleb Mercer." "Yes, May. That is a very pretty speech for a man in a barn coat." "It is not a speech, May. It is a speech, Caleb, and it is a good one, and I am going to tell you now what I told you last night." "Tell me." "I am not ready." "I know." A woman like me does not trust a speech the first time she hears it, or the second, or the 10th. "I know, May. Yes, I will say it the 10th time, and the 100th. I will say it every morning at 5 when the biscuits come out of the stove. I will say it without saying it. I will say it by not saying this ever again. I will say it by building a chair in the kitchen for you to sit in while the coffee boils, because I have noticed, ma'am, that you have been standing at that stove for 8 weeks and you have not had a chair. May looked at her hands. She did not cry, but something in her chest, something that had been held so tight for so many years, she had forgotten it was being held, loosened another thread and another and another. "Mr. Mercer." "Ma'am?" "The biscuits are burnin'." He stood. "Then let us save the biscuits, Miss Carter." She stood. "Yes, Mr. Mercer. Let us save the biscuits." They went to the kitchen. The biscuits were not burning. They were perfect. They came out gold and tall and smelling of buttermilk, and Eli came in the back door in his work shirt and stopped in the kitchen doorway and said quietly, "Mornin', Miss Carter. Mornin', boss." And Tom Hurley came in behind him and said, "Mornin'." And the four of them sat down at the table, and May poured the coffee, and Caleb said, "Miss Carter." And May said, "Mr. Mercer." And Eli looked at Tom, and Tom looked at his plate, and nobody mentioned the hoofbeats that had come down the yard and gone back up it before breakfast. Because in a ranch house, some things were a matter of record, and some things were a matter of weather, and Lillian Whitmore, by the end of the first biscuit, was weather. But by noon, the town had the story. By 2 in the afternoon, Sheriff Doyle Briggs had the story in a version that suited him. By 4 in the afternoon, a rider had gone out from the Whitmore party to a telegraph office. By 6 in the evening, a wire had come back from Missouri. And by sundown, Elias Crow was on a train headed west with a leather satchel on the seat beside him and a paper in that satchel with May Carter's name on it, and the words "Outstanding Debt" written in his own hand, and a smile on his face that was not a smile, but the thing a snake does with its mouth before it strikes. Crow arrived in Cold Hollow on a Tuesday at noon. He came in the front door of the boarding house. He took a room. He paid in advance. He washed his face. He ate a quiet meal. And at 2 in the afternoon, he walked into the sheriff's office with his hat under his arm and his leather satchel in his hand, and he set the satchel on Doyle Briggs's desk and said, "Sheriff, I have come for my property." Briggs looked up from his coffee. "Your property, Mr. Crow?" "A woman named May Carter, currently employed, I am told, at the Mercer Ranch. She left Missouri under an unpaid debt to my house and an unsigned contract to Mr. Mercer. I have come to collect one or the other." Briggs grinned. The grin had been waiting all summer. "Mr. Crow, you have come to the right town." Ada Bell heard it first. She heard it from the telegraph clerk, who had heard it from the boarding house boy, who had heard it from Crow's own mouth at breakfast. By 3 in the afternoon, Ada Bell was in her shop, and she was writing a note in her small, firm hand, and she was folding that note around a silver dollar, and she was pressing it into the palm of the stable boy who did deliveries out past the river. "Boy." "Yes, Mrs. Bell. You ride to the Mercer place. You give this note to Miss Carter herself. Not to Mercer, not to the hands, to Miss Carter. You put it in her hand. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Mrs. Bell." "If Crow or Briggs stops you on the road, you eat this note. You hear me?" "Yes, Mrs. Bell." "Ride." May was in the kitchen garden when the boy came up the road. She straightened. She saw the horse coming. She saw it was not a ranch horse. She set down her trowel. She wiped her hands on her apron. By the time the boy had reined up at the gate, Caleb was already walking out of the barn with his rifle loose at his side, not pointed, not raised, only present the way a rifle is present on a ranch when a rider comes in who is not one of yours. "Son, sir, I got a note. For Miss Carter, ma'am. From Mrs. Bell." May took it. She opened it. She read it once. She read it twice. She folded it in half, and then in half again, and her hands did not shake. Her hands had stopped shaking at things a long time ago, and they did not start again now. "Caleb." "Yes, May." "Elias Crow is in Cold Hollow. He has come to collect a debt." Caleb looked at the boy. "Son, you want water?" "Yes, sir." "Tom." "Water the boy's horse." "Son, come in the kitchen. Miss Carter will feed you. You will wait 1 hour. Then you will ride back to Mrs. Bell, and you will tell her Mr. Mercer is coming to town tomorrow at noon, and he will meet her at her store before he meets anybody else. Can you carry that?" "Yes, sir." "Good boy." In the kitchen, May fed the boy. Her hands moved. Her face did not move. When the boy was eating, she turned to Caleb. Caleb Mercer. May. I told you in a parlor yesterday morning that I was not ready to answer you. I am going to give you my answer now. May. Hush, Caleb. Let me say it. Yes. I am not marrying you tomorrow because Crow has come. I will not have my answer to you be the answer of a frightened woman buying a roof. Do you hear me? I hear you. I am riding into town tomorrow at noon. I am standing in front of Crow and Briggs and whoever else turns up to watch, and I am paying my own debt with my own name and my own hand. You may come with me. You may not pay it for me. Do you hear me, Caleb? May. Do you hear me? I hear you. I do not agree. You do not have to agree. May. A debt like that at Crow's interest you will not settle with housekeeper's wages. I have settled half of it. I have been setting coin aside for 8 weeks in a tin in the pantry. The other half I will borrow. From whom, May? From you, Mr. Mercer. At the bank rate, in writin', with a promissory note and a term and a signature. I will pay you back month by month the same way I would have paid Crow. I will walk into that town owing nothing to a man who looks at me like a crate of nails on a porch. Caleb Mercer looked at her for a long moment. Then he said very quiet, May Carter. Yes, Caleb. You are the most stubborn woman I have ever stood in a kitchen with. I have been called worse, sir. Not by me. Not by you. Lately. He almost smiled. He turned to the window. He turned back. May? Yes. I will write the note, at the bank rate, with a term, with a signature. I will ride with you tomorrow. I will stand behind you, not in front of you. And I will not say a word in that town unless you look at me and ask me to speak. Do we have an understandin'? We have an understandin', Mr. Mercer. May. Yes. When you come home from town tomorrow with your debt paid in your own hand, I am going to ask you something on this porch, and you are going to answer me without Crow in the county and without Briggs in my ear and without a fee between us. Do you hear me? I hear you, Caleb. Good. They rode into Cold Hollow on Wednesday at noon. May rode the bay mare. Caleb rode the gray gelding. Tom Hurley came behind them in the wagon with Eli beside him because Caleb had said quiet that morning at breakfast, Boys, you do not have to come. And Tom had said, Boss, we are comin'. And Eli had not even spoken. He had just put his hat on. The main street of Cold Hollow was not empty when they rode in. Word had gone around. Men stood on the boardwalk with their thumbs in their vest pockets. Women stood at shop doors with their arms folded. Mrs. Ada Bell stood in the doorway of her store with her mouth set in a line. Elias Crow was on the boardwalk in front of the sheriff's office. Sheriff Doyle Briggs was 1 pace behind him. Crow had his black coat on in the summer heat, the same coat he had worn into May's room at dawn 3 months before. May did not look at Caleb as she dismounted. She tied the mare. She smoothed the front of her dress. She walked up onto the boardwalk alone. Mr. Crow. Miss Carter, how well you look. Mr. Crow, I have come to pay my debt. Have you, Miss Carter? The full sum, with interest, in 1 payment, today. Crow smiled. Miss Carter, the sum you owe this house is $162.40, with interest at the rate of $178.90, as of today. I have done the figurin', Mr. Crow. I did the figurin' in Missouri, and I did the figurin' again last night. I have the amount. I have it in my hand. Briggs laughed. Crow, she has been countin' coins in a kitchen. May did not look at Briggs. Mr. Crow, do you accept the sum? Miss Carter, a matter this size is not settled on a boardwalk. Step into the sheriff's office. There are papers. There are... Mr. Crow, on the boardwalk, in front of these witnesses, do you accept the sum? Crow's smile thinned. Miss Carter, you are being theatrical. I am being clear, Mr. Crow. I have a reason for being clear. The reason is that 3 months ago you walked into my room at dawn without knocking, and you sold me to a stranger for a debt, and you did it in a hallway with no witnesses. I will not settle my debt to you in a room with no witnesses. I will settle it here, in the sun, with the town watchin', so that no man in this county or yours will ever again say that May Carter left Missouri owing $1 to Elias Crow. Do you accept the sum?" The boardwalk was very quiet. Crow looked past May. He looked at Caleb. He looked at the two men in the wagon. He looked at the women at the shop doors. He looked at Ada Bell, whose mouth was a line. He said, "I accept the sum." "Thank you, Mr. Crow." She opened her reticule. She counted the money out into his hand on the boardwalk, coin by coin, bill by bill. Her hands did not shake. She counted aloud. When she reached $178.90, she stopped. "Mr. Crow, I would like a receipt, written in your hand, witnessed by Sheriff Briggs whether he likes it or not, and by Mrs. Ada Bell, who is a woman of good standing in this county. I would like the receipt to state that the debt of Miss May Carter to the House of Crow is paid in full as of this date, and that no further claim exists from your house against my name, my person, my labor, or my future earnings. I would like it written plain. Miss Carter, in your hand, Mr. Crow, plain. Now." He wrote it. She watched every word. He signed it. Briggs signed it. Ada Bell came down from her doorway and signed it. And as she signed it, she looked up once at May, and her eyes were wet, and May saw it, and May did not let her own eyes water, because she had promised her mother in a graveyard in Missouri 11 years ago that she would not cry on a boardwalk in front of a man who had bought her. She folded the receipt. She put it in her reticule. "Mr. Crow, Miss Carter, leave this county, today, on the afternoon coach. If you are in Cold Hollow tomorrow at noon, I will ask Mr. Mercer to speak to you, and Mr. Mercer does not speak to men like you twice. Do you understand me? You do not give orders in this. Do you understand me, Mr. Crow?" "I understand you. Sheriff Briggs." Briggs's grin had gone stale on his face an hour ago. "Miss Carter, you laughed at me on this boardwalk 3 months ago. You called me the heavy one. You did it in front of every man and woman on this street. I will not ask you to take it back, because a man who takes a cruelty back only because he has been cornered is not a man worth the taken back. I will only tell you this. I live here now. I will be in this town every Saturday for the rest of my natural life. I will pass you on this boardwalk. I will see you in the feed store. I will see you in the church pew. And every time you see me, sir, I want you to remember that the woman you called heavy walked into this town and paid $178 in her own hand in front of a witness and did not flinch. Do you hear me, Sheriff? Hear me?" Briggs did not answer. "Do you hear me, Sheriff?" "I hear you, Miss Carter." "Good. Mr. Mercer." Caleb stepped up onto the boardwalk. "Ma'am?" "I am finished here. Take me home." "Yes, ma'am." He offered her his arm. She took it. And in front of the whole town of Cold Hollow, in front of the women at the shop doors, and the men on the boardwalk, and Sheriff Doyle Briggs with his stale grin, and Elias Crow with $178 in his hand and no woman to his name, Caleb Mercer walked May Carter down the steps and to the bay mare, and he helped her into the saddle with the care of a man helping a queen onto her horse, and he mounted the gray gelding, and the two of them rode out of Cold Hollow, with Tom and Eli behind them. And not one soul on that street spoke a word until they were half a mile gone. When they were half a mile gone, Ada Bell, still on the boardwalk, said to nobody in particular, "Well, I suppose we will all have to learn some manners now." And a woman at the dry goods door said very quietly, "Yes, I suppose we will." What? They did not speak on the ride home. At the ranch, May dismounted. She handed the mare's reins to Eli without looking at him. She walked up to the porch. She stopped at the top step. She turned around. Caleb had dismounted. He was standing in the yard with his hat in his hands. Tom and Eli were at the barn with the horses, and Tom had taken Eli's shoulder and turned him away, because Tom Hurley was a man who had been married for 21 years before his wife died, and he knew when a porch was not for watching. "Caleb Mercer." "May." "Come up here." He came up. He stopped one step below her because she was on the top step, and at that one step of difference, she was very nearly his height, and he looked up into her face like a man looking up at a thing he had been waiting to see for a long time. Caleb. May. Ask me your question. May Carter. Yes, Caleb. I have no speech. I had one last night. I had one this morning. I have lost them both on the ride home. I have only got the one thing. Say it, Caleb. May. Stay. Is that the question? That is the question. Caleb Mercer. Yes, May. I'm going to tell you what I said in a kitchen 3 nights ago. A kind word has to come back the next morning and the morning after that. You said to me you would say it 100 times. Have you said it 100 times yet? No, May. Then you are going to say it 100 more times, and every one of those times, Caleb Mercer, I will be standing in this kitchen. Do you understand me? May. Say it, Caleb. Is that a yes, May? That is a yes, Caleb. That is the yes. But I have a condition. Name it. I do not come as your debt. I do not come as your mercy. I come as your equal, or I do not come at all. Which is it, Caleb? As the only equal I have, May. Say it again, Caleb. As the only equal I have. Good. Now you may kiss me, Mr. Mercer. On the porch, in the sun, with the boys at the barn pretending not to look, because it is the first time in my life a man has said he sees me whole, and I will not have the first kiss of my life happen in a dark kitchen. He kissed her. He kissed her the way a grown man kisses a woman he has decided on. He kissed her slow and sure, and without any apology. And when he drew back his hand, stayed flat against the side of her face, and he looked at her as if he was memorizing the shape of her and May Carter. For the first time in 24 years of her life, stood still, and let a man look at her face like it was a thing worth looking at. May. Yes, Caleb. I was wrong about you on a boardwalk 3 months ago, and I will spend the rest of my days being right about you on this porch. Do you hear me, ma'am? I hear you, Mr. Mercer. They were married in the church at Cold Hollow on a Sunday in September. The preacher's wife, who had told Caleb in April to send for a bride, cried through the ceremony. Mrs. Ada Bell stood up as witness. Tom Hurley gave May away because her father was in the ground in Missouri, and Tom had said the week before, "Ma'am, if you will have an old cowhand to walk you, I would be honored." And May had said, "Mr. Hurley, I would have no other." Sheriff Doyle Briggs did not come. He had left the county 2 weeks before. He had not said where he was going. The new sheriff was a man named Hollis, who was from Kansas, and who had not been on the boardwalk the day May arrived, and who tipped his hat to Mrs. Mercer in the main street the first time they met, and called her ma'am, and meant it. Elias Crow did not come. Elias Crow was by then in a jail in St. Louis on a different charge involving a different woman and a different debt, and a sheriff who had not found him clever. Lillian Whitmore did not come. Lillian Whitmore married the following spring a banker in Chicago, and by all accounts she was content, and May Carter Mercer did not wish her otherwise. The town still talked for a time. Some of them never stopped talking. But by the time the first snow came, the talk had run out of fuel. A ranch ran, a house ran. A woman stood at a stove every morning at 5. A man came to the table every morning at 6. Biscuits came out of the stove gold and tall. Coffee went into cups black and hot. A chair sat in the kitchen that had not been there in April, and it was hers, and Caleb Mercer had built it with his own hands, and she sat in it while the coffee boiled every morning for the rest of her life. And on the west rise of the ranch where Sarah and Thomas were buried, May went up one Sunday in October, with Caleb beside her, and she laid a handful of late prairie asters on the 2 small stones, and she said quiet to the names she had never met, "I will take care of him. I promise you, I will take care of him." And Caleb wept beside her. Not hard, not long, but honestly, for the first time in 3 years, and she did not turn her face away from his tears, and he did not turn his face away from hers. They had 31 years together on that ranch. They had 3 children, all of them living, all of them tall. The oldest was a girl. May named her Sarah, and Caleb did not argue, and the name fit the child the way a good name fits a good child. May Carter. Mercer died in the spring of her 73rd year, in her own bed in the house she had walked into on a summer afternoon at the age of 24 as the woman nobody had ordered. Caleb Mercer followed her 9 months later, and the town of Cold Hollow, by then grown to a proper town with a school and a courthouse and a bank, closed every shop on the day of his funeral. And the preacher spoke one sentence at the graveside that was remembered in that county for 50 years. He said, "Caleb Mercer was a man who learned to see." And under that stone beside her, the woman who had taught him rested with her full name cut deep into the granite. May Carter Mercer, beloved wife, seen whole. The wrong bride became the only bride. The heavy one became the cornerstone. And the cowboy who had growled on a boardwalk in the summer of his 41st year, "This ain't the woman I ordered," learned before the first frost fell that she was the only woman he had ever been meant to receive. That is the whole of the story. That is the end.